Howdy, Immortalium here, and I thought it might be interesting to do a classic anime recommendations video today. I've done plenty of recommendations of manga in the past, but I don't believe I've done a recommendations video for anime. You're free to correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'd love to hear it. But given that I don't recall recording any of them or uploading any of them, I thought it might be interesting to do one today. But before we start, I think we need to kind of define here classic. In my mind, I'm talking pre-1990s anime. Now, of course, there's the debate to be had on when is something a classic. You know, there's plenty of people who refer to stuff from the 90s and from the 2000s as classic, but for the purposes of this video I'm talking pre-1990s. And so first off, we're actually going to start off with a short film, and that short film is from the experimental films of Osamu Tezuka. In general, I would recommend that you pick up this box set, particularly if you're interested in kind of experimental animation or in Osamu Tezuka himself. But the particular short that I'm recommending from this today is one called Legend of the Forest. Now, Legend of the Forest was one of the last short films that he did before he died, and in fact is incomplete. But even so, Legend of the Forest is an absolutely incredible work. In particular, the first part. The first part following the life of a squirrel as he faces off against this woodcutter. And the thing that I really adore about this animation is that it is a loving tribute to the history of animation, at least up to that point, in which we see how animation evolved from still images, kind of crude drawings. There's even an amazing bit where they reference Gertie the dinosaur, working its way through black and white animation to color animation and so on. And I just think that is an absolutely spectacular work, and one that I think a lot of animation fans will really adore. Now, the second part of that short deals with these forest denizens facing off against all of these woodcutters, and it's good, but I wouldn't call it as good as the first part. Basically, the second part is about the conflict between full animation and limited animation. But while it still has a lot to say, I just didn't think it was as great as the first part. But still really good, don't get me wrong. It just pales compared to the first one. So yeah, easy recommendation of Legend of the Forest. Go check it out if you haven't. I've reviewed it in the past, and if you still haven't watched it, then this is another recommendation for you to go and do so. After that, we have a personal favorite of mine, and one that I think a lot of people are at least aware of, because it actually comes from a very popular anime franchise, Lupin the Third. I'm sure many of you have already heard of the franchise Lupin the Third. It is a very, very popular franchise. This is the first season, and the reason that I'm recommending the first season primarily, it lays down the groundwork for a lot of the relationships between the characters, and also I just think that a lot of the stories in this series are fantastic, incredible. Some episodes are utterly stunning in how well written they are. They're fantastic. Now, that's not to say that every episode in this is a masterpiece, but I think in general the quality level is particularly high, and that's why in particular I'd recommend this one. The first season is fantastic. Definitely go check it out. I do believe, if I'm correct, that they've produced an English dub for this now, which is interesting. This box that I have, I got many years ago, so I don't have the new English dub. If you're a Lupin the Third fan, then you absolutely owe it to yourself to see this series. Like, what are you doing? Go see it already. And for those of you who just appreciate good storytelling, this is one that I would strongly recommend as well. After that, we have a series that I have no hesitation in saying that it's one of my favorites, and that is Space Pirate Captain Harlock. Similarly to Lupin the Third, I would expect that a lot of you have heard of Space Pirate Captain Harlock before, whether that be because of the CGI movie that came out on Netflix, or maybe it aired in your country when you were younger, I don't know. But Space Pirate Captain Harlock itself is an absolutely spectacular series set in the far future, in which humanity has kind of become lethargic and uninterested in challenging themselves, in doing things, etc., etc. Meanwhile, Captain Harlock is trying to help the planet, whether that be kind of pushing humanity be proactive again, and also he has to take on the Mazone, who are these invading aliens who are planning to take over Earth. And there are a number of reasons why I absolutely adore this show. I think the music is absolutely stunning. The animation is amazing. This is directed by Rintaro, who would go on to become a legendary anime director, and you can really see all of his talent in this series. There are so many amazing shots and edits and everything that is absolutely spectacular. And of course the characters themselves are amazing. Even the Mazone are actually amazing villains. Like, they're one of my favorite villains I've ever seen in an anime series. I think they're spectacular. Now, this is a 42 episode series, and what some people might kind of question is, did this need to be 42 episodes? And I would say no, there's like 1 or 2 episodes in there that are kind of fillery and, you know, not particularly important. But in general, Space Pirate Captain Harlock itself is still absolutely amazing, and one that I would strongly recommend that people check it out. I think it's fantastic. And finally, the last one is actually going to be a trilogy of films, which is quite interesting. And that, of course, is the Animerama Trilogy. Now, this one is a bit of an interesting one to recommend because, again, these are actually a little inconsistent in quality, but I'll get onto that in a moment. So it's made up of 3 films, and the first one is 1001 Nights. And 1001 Nights, I think, is a really good movie. It's a bit messy in the way that it's told, but that doesn't take away from the fact that this is a spectacular story, and the way it's portrayed is spectacular. All the forms of animation used within are breathtaking. It's a film that I look back fondly on, and even if it isn't perfect, it certainly isn't, it's one that I'm definitely excited to show people in the future. Now, the second film of the Animerama Trilogy is more debatable, certainly more so, and that, of course, is Cleopatra. Now, Cleopatra, of course, tells the story of Cleopatra from Egypt. I believe it specifically Cleopatra the Seventh. However, we do have an interesting injection of sci-fi into the storytelling. And Cleopatra, as much as there is some fantastic animation, in particular, it actually contains one of my favorite animated moments ever in any animated media. The actual storytelling itself is very messy. Like, oh man, it's so messy. And it's a movie that, you know, of all of these 3, it's probably the one that I would recommend the least, just because it's not as good as the other 2. But if you're watching these movies in the first place, particularly given that 1001 Nights comes in the same box set as Cleopatra, over here at least, then it's definitely worth, you know, at least watching to get an opinion on. And then the real gem of the Animerama Trilogy, Belladonna of Sadness. Now, Belladonna of Sadness was the last film in the Animerama Trilogy. So it was primarily Eiichi Yamamoto working on this film, and he decided to kind of cut down on the humor of the previous films and to really push the medium. And what you get is a really dark but absolutely intriguing film. And I don't really want to say what it's about here, just because it can be a bit intense. If you want to know what it's about, you can check out my review of this film. But Belladonna of Sadness, the artwork is absolutely spectacular, and the message of the film is actually surprisingly powerful. Now, something that's going to throw people off is the fact that there isn't actually that much animation in this film. At the time, Mushi Production was on the verge of bankruptcy, and actually it was only a little time after this film came out that they did actually declare bankruptcy. So the actual animation of this film is very limited, but what animation is present in the film is still actually very good. And the artwork itself is just so beautiful to look at, even when all of these horrible, horrendous things are happening. That it's just a great film, and it's one that I would definitely recommend, that if you can handle strong content, that's definitely worth checking out. So those were my classic anime recommendations. And of course, I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on all of these, as well as the topic of, you know, classic anime. First off, have you seen any of these films? And if you have, did you like them? Did you dislike them? Would you recommend them? What are your thoughts on the topic of classic anime? When for you does anime become classic? You know, does it have to be before the 1990s? Can it be during the 1990s? Can it be during the 2000s, etc., etc.? And of course, if you have any other information about the topic, such as any of these films or any of the people who worked on them, on classic anime in general, etc., etc., please leave them in the comments below. And of course, if you want to support the channel, I would encourage you to use my Amazon or Right Stuff affiliate links in the description below. when you purchase an anime or manga through those affiliate links, not only supporting me, not only supporting the channel, but you're also supporting the anime and manga industry. So I'd highly encourage you to purchase your anime and manga through those affiliate links. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye bye.